Chairman Nadler, Ranking Member Collins, and other members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here to share my experience and perspectives on gun violence in America. My name is Aalayah Eastmond, a senior at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. While it is an honor to be here before you today, I am only here because of horrific events that have compelled me to be here. Next Thursday marks 1 year from the day that 17 of my fellow classmates and educators were shot and killed, 17 more injured. Many like me were fortunate enough to walk away with our lives. But we will never be free from the terror. Some will carry visible scars, but all of us were scarred emotionally for the rest of our lives. I was in my 4th period Holocaust history class, and we were presenting our projects on hate groups. I could never have imagined my group partner, Nicholas Doret, would have saved my life in moments to come. After our presentations, we began to hear loud pops. When the gunman shot into our classroom, Nicholas Doret was in front of me. The gunman's bullets killed him and Helena Ramsey. As Nicholas fell, I matched his every movement and hid underneath his lifeless body as bullets riddled my classmates. I thought I was going to die. As I laid there, I begged God to please make it fast. When the shooter moved on to another classroom, I rolled Nicholas off of me and placed his head on his arm so it wouldn't be touching the cold ground. My classmates pulled me behind a filing cabinet where I called my mom and my dad to say what I thought would be my last goodbyes. I told them how much I loved them and my brothers. I will never forget that day, what I saw, what I did, what happened to my classmates. I will never forget Nicholas Doret, who in death protected me. He saved my life. The effect of the shooting did not end on February 14th. Days later, the stress from the shooting took such a toll on my mother's body that she experienced a miscarriage. Gun violence ends thousands of lives every year. It is an epidemic that extends well beyond high-profile shootings. My family knew this long before Parkland. 15 years ago in Brooklyn, New York, my uncle Patrick Edwards was shot in the back and killed. He was just 18 with his whole life ahead of him. I ask that you give my generation the chance he never had. Minority communities bear the heaviest burden of gun violence. We know this as a fact. Weeks ago, a new report showed that the life expectancy for African Americans has been reduced by 4 years on average because of gun violence. But this report didn't show me anything I didn't already know. Gun violence is an everyday occurrence, and the vast majority of affected communities are minority. We must stop the supply of crime guns, and we must also ensure that there is comprehensive criminal justice reform to address the structural inequalities in the system. I am here to tell you a simple truth. Gun violence is such an epidemic that anyone, anywhere, at any time can be affected, rich or poor, white or black, young or old. All Americans are at risk, and this is a side of America that none of us can or should take pride in. Since that horrific day, my classmates and I have been working tirelessly in support of sensible gun laws. I got involved with Brady campaign's Team Enough, young people dedicated to strengthening our gun laws and engaging in communities most impacted by gun violence. I am just one of the hundreds of thousands of students that came out at the March for Our Lives demanding change. Our stories and voices must be heard on the most important issue facing our generation. We are the generation that will end gun violence. I implore you to pass legislation that will make us all safer. Today in America, anyone can go on the internet, answer an ad, or go to a gun show and buy a gun with no background check required. This makes absolutely no sense. I urge you to expand Brady background checks by voting for H.R. 8 requiring checks for virtually any gun transaction. The original Brady law passed with strong bipartisan support, and this should too. The Protection and Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, also known as PLACA, was passed by Congress 15 years ago. No other industry has this kind of protection from lawsuits, and it is time that Congress repeal this outrageous law. Extreme risk laws allow family members and law enforcement to petition a court to temporarily remove guns from people in crisis who pose danger to themselves or others. Congress should encourage more states to pass these laws. Assault weapons and high-capacity ammunition magazines belong on the battlefield, not in our communities. My classmates and I have seen firsthand how uniquely lethal these weapons are. Congress should immediately reinstitute the assault weapons ban. Congress should also close the Charleston loophole. The shooter who killed 9 people in the South Carolina church shooting was able to buy a gun because his background check wasn't completed in 3 days. Most federal checks take just minutes. Some take longer, but law enforcement needs more time to complete those checks. I also urge you to address the concerns of our Black and brown communities who are disproportionately affected by gun violence. Rather than listen to special interests, I ask you to listen to the nation's young people and the overwhelming majority of Americans who have had enough. We have had enough of gun violence in our schools, in our movie theaters, our places of worship, in nightclubs and restaurants, on our streets, and in our communities. Enough. We have all had enough. I hope you have had enough too and use the power that the people have vested in you to do what is right. Our lives depend on you. Our lives are in your hands. Thank you.
Next person. Second one.